Welcome back to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today we're back in my plant room, and it is time to start transplanting some of the seedlings that I started. Now, we had some successes and failures. We're still learning in this process. So let me show you what they look like right now. So here we are, and we had some excellent germination rates, especially with the lettuce mesclun mix. So this is what I'm going to be using for growing indoors and cutting. We also have the kale that I'm trying to grow indoors for just eating, just to see how it works, and it germinated really well. I think I'll probably split these and put one per pot. We also have our onion seedlings. Now these did get mixed up. I had a crack in my tray and was leaking water everywhere. And so when I yanked all of the onions out, I'm not sure exactly now which is which. These two right here had the slowest germination rate. They germinated at the same time, so I'm pretty sure they're the same varieties. We may have them where they should be. This may be the bunching onions right here, but we're just going to grow them out and see. So the germination rate was excellent, and they seem to be growing quite well. So we're going to just keep everything in these pots and just keep them under the lights until we're ready to put the onions out, until we're done with the lettuce. Now this side had really good germination, but we have had a problem, and it's with the kale and a little bit with the kohlrabi. And what I think this is damping off. Now, I'm not a seed germinating expert, but if your plants stay too, well, actually this one looks like it got too dry. But if your plants stay too wet, there's a disease called damping off, and they just wilt and die. And if you can see this little guy right here, this is what they do at first, and then they don't look good after that. So these we'll have to probably get rid of. And it happened just a little bit with the kohlrabi. You know, some of these don't look as good. The cabbage was absolutely great. So was the chard and the basil. Now we're going to be splitting these up and transplanting them all into new cells. We're going to start fertilizing them and get them ready to plant out in the garden. Now I do have 2 hoop houses out in the garden that I'm going to be transplanting the cabbage and the kohlrabi and the kale into. So I'm not too worried about it getting really cold. It is mid-February and it's been a really mild winter, but it has killed the uncovered plants out there. So I'm going to cover these and see how well they do. So anyway, let me show you what I'm going to do to transplant these plants. So the first ones I'm going to transplant are going to be my basil. So these are really flexible cells. What I'm going to do is just pop it out really carefully. You can see the little roots right there. It's looking good. And I don't think I'm going to split up this basil. I think I'm going to put this all into just one cell. So to do that, I'm just going to dig a little hole. I don't know if you can see, but I'm going to dig a little hole, stick the basil in there, make sure I'm not squishing the roots too much, and then just pat it down very gently. So as you can see, let me pull that little guy out. So as you can see, we've got our basil all transplanted. Then all I will need to do is just water that in. So let's get the rest of these done. Now this one only has 1 basil on it, but that's going to be okay. We'll see how they do. We'll see how the ones with multiple basil does versus the one with 1 basil. Tuck that little guy right in there. Move on to the next one. So now we've got our basil all ready to go. Let's move on to the chard. Now, as you can see, there are multiple chards in each cell, and I really only want 6 of them. I don't eat that much chard, so we're going to have to sacrifice some of them, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Now, what I love about this chard, this is the rainbow chard. There's a lot of different colors. So what I think I'm going to do is try to have 6 of them different colors. So for example, this one is a red one that is really nice and big, so I'll probably choose that one. We've got some gorgeous yellow ones, and then there's some pink ones too. So let's pull these out and choose the best ones. So I'll gently tease them apart. You can see right here we have one plant, and I'm going to plant that in a cell. So I'll just transplant this as a singleton. There he is. Now we've got a nice little yellow one here that we're going to transplant, and here's a nice little pink one with its roots. So now we've transplanted all the chard. We're just going to have to water all of these in here really shortly, and let's move on to the cabbage. Now the cabbage, there's tons of them. I planted 12 cells of cabbage, and there's probably about 3 in each cell, but I only have space for 12 cabbages, so I'm just going to choose the best ones. Trying not to rip the roots. Just very carefully tease them apart. So here's my first few choices. I'm obviously going to take the biggest ones with the biggest root systems. So that, I guess it's the second one from the right. This one right here will probably be discarded. So I feel like I'm wasting a lot of cabbages. I'll have to see if I want to transplant more of those up, see if I have any room later. But anyway, we're going to move on to the kohlrabi. Now the kohlrabi are not looking as good, so this is going to be a little bit more difficult selection process. We'll see. I would like 6 of them, so let's see how many we can get out of this. So it looks like the ones in the center are doing better. Let's see if I can pop out a good cell without tearing any of the roots, because we really don't have any of these to waste. So these are looking okay. We'll transplant these 2. Now we have both trays planted up, and I still have some cabbages, and I'd like to separate out some of this kale. So maybe I will head back outside, fill up another tray, because I do have a few other trays available, and maybe not fill up a full tray, but we'll see what we can do with that. So it is actually getting pretty late, and I decided what I'm going to do is I will do the other tray of vegetables tomorrow and update you next week and see how many of them have actually taken, because we should know if they're going to survive by next week. But the fertilizer that I do like to use, and I also learned this from Liz Hamilton, is the Osmocote fertilizer. And I've also used these Miracle-Gro singles. I stick them in my watering can. I don't know if you can read this, but it's 1 packet per 1 gallon of water. For outdoor plants and indoor plants, 1 packet for 2 gallons of water. So I use the 1 packet for 2 gallons of water. And this seems to have worked really well last year. Now, one thing I forgot to add is I am using the Miracle-Gro potting soil. It seems to retain water really well. It does have fertilizer in it already, so maybe I'm overdoing it on the fertilizer. I hope I don't burn my little plants. I also pre-moistened the soil before I transplanted the plants. So I will be updating you next week. I'm excited to see how it goes. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful garden adventure.